Hi, and welcome to the Future of Dermatology podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Farah Kamangar, board certified dermatologist. We are here to talk about anything and everything dermatology related. You'll hear from me and my guests who are dermatologists, physicians, experts, scientists, residents, and medical students in the field of dermatology. We publish weekly, so if you like what you hear, hit that subscribe button and show us some love, and thank you for joining us. Hi, welcome back. We are so excited for today's session. We have Todd Bello, who is amazing and fantastic, and I can't wait to hear everything he has to tell us today. So Todd is not only a psoriasis patient and has a breadth of knowledge to talk to us about that, but he also founded Overcoming Psoriasis, which is a huge patient networking group on social media, and it's just had such an impact on patients, I think, all around the world, Todd, right? So I would just love to, there's so much to unpack there, but I would just love to hear, feel free to start anywhere in that or add anything else that I missed, but basically anywhere from your journey. Yeah, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having me, and I'm excited too to be here. So basically, I started overcoming psoriasis because I was a patient in need, right? I wanted to hear from peers and how they're dealing in their challenges with psoriasis. So, my background as far as who I am, I'm a father of two, Michael and Jacqueline. They're both great kids. They're 33 and 31. Both are involved. My daughter's married. My son is in the process of getting married. So they both have
Oh,
their master's
congrats.
degree from Stony Brook College, University of Stony Brook, and they're doing phenomenal. And the biggest fear I had was like I had psoriasis. I'm their parents. Are they going to get psoriasis? I know they have a 3% because only one parent chance of getting psoriasis if one parent has the disease. So they're past the age when I was diagnosed at the age of 28. So I'm 61 now. I'm going to be 62 in January. And my journey is different from everybody else's, but it's similar in the fact that, I had to turn to medication to get, clear the way I am today. So there's light at the end of the tunnel for all those people that are wondering about psoriasis and how to deal with it. Because when I was first diagnosed and I went to the dermatologist like yourself, they told me there's no cure. So that was kind of a heartbreaker. And then it was very primitive as far as there was no internet. I had to go to the library and discover what psoriasis was because I had no idea what psoriasis was. It basically affected every aspect of my life. So my career, my financial, mentally, I had to go to a psychiatrist, uh, um, licensed medical health practitioner, and basically, they did what they had to do, and then they were suggesting some medications such as Wellbutrin and Lexapro. So as far as the treatments were concerned, there was really nothing available at that time because it was over 30 years ago. So some of the treatments back then were coal tar, which I'm sure,
Yep.
it's used today over the counter. And they have a prescription coal tar, right, doctor? That
Yeah,
doesn't
yeah,
smell.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So, I've been through every topical you can imagine,
Yes.
exhausted all, the treatments that were available back then. And then I was looking at, I belong to the National Psoriasis Foundation, which I highly recommend to anybody that's listening out there who's a patient of psoriasis. They're the engines of the train for psoriasis patients. And, they're funding research and I've learned so much through them. I met Dr. Lebwall, who's, um, he was a chair for the, AAD. Is that it?
Yeah, yeah.
American.
Dr. Lepwell has probably been the chair of everything with dermatology over time. He's so fantastic. And we've
Yeah.
all learned so much from him as well. And we have these really giants in psoriasis like Dr. Lepwell, Dr. Koo, Dr. Alimenter, like all over the country who've, like you said, have kind of advanced the
Yeah.
field.
So,
It's kind of
early,
incredible, the advancements of the last 30 years.
yeah. And that's what we'll go into because it's so
Yeah.
amazing. Like, we did a Facebook Live in group of overcoming psoriasis, which was so
Yeah.
beneficial to our members. And what's come out of that now is over the 30 years, like you said, it's night and day for the treatment of psoriasis. So it's why I'm 100% clear today. I might have one spot on my body
Hmm.
that I've been dealing with that's persistent. But other than that, I could deal with that. As
Yeah.
before, I had psoriasis all over my body, it was on my face, and people wouldn't reception, with people out in public, it wasn't too kind. It wasn't. It, you, I knew before because I was diagnosed at 28, so I knew how
Hmm.
people treated me before and then how people treated me afterwards. So
Yeah.
it wasn't. It really was a mental impact.
Yeah.
Played big time into my self-esteem. So I
And you
lost a lot of
mentioned,
self-esteem.
gosh, that's incredible to hear the story, because a lot of times in the
Yeah,
clinic, what we might see is maybe 10,
yeah,
15 minutes, right, with our patients. And you
right,
wonder when you give a diagnosis like that, because I think everything else up until then maybe was, maybe like a childhood illness. If you took some antibiotics, it went away. So you go to see the doctor and you're like, what is this? And how does it go away in a week or two? And they tell you,
right.
well, it won't, right? This is how it's going to be. Like, and you just wonder,
Yeah,
like, really what impact that does, and what kind of
yeah,
impact that has, to learn that, well, like,
yeah,
from today onward, this is
right.
something you're going to have to,
Mentally,
yeah,
yeah, mentally, physically, and financially, it's crushed me. But like I said, there's light at the end of the tunnel. I don't want to be
yeah,
doom and gloom. I want to be part of
yeah,
the positive influence on people's lives because,
exactly.
when you're first diagnosed, where do you turn? I always recommend go see a board certified dermatologist because that's the number one thing. And then join the National Psoriasis Foundation. Maybe join a support group like the one I started. And I have many overcoming psoriasis. It's not just, the main platform is overcoming psoriasis, but there's overcoming psoriasis of Australia. There's
Mhm.
overcoming psoriasis, there's just so many different ones. I have, all uh, the treatments that I've been on. I also started
Yeah,
support groups for them. So they, like the Skyrizi, I'm on Skyrizi right now,
yeah, yeah.
which is, I contribute a lot of my success to Skyrizi and that medication, but Cosentyx also, I have a
Hmm.
Cosentyx group. I have a Tremfya group. Um,
That's
yeah,
fantastic.
so it's just so amazing. Everything that I've been through, where I've come and where I am today is night and day. And
And then,
you
yeah,
don't have to suffer with psoriasis anymore, right, doctor?
yeah, yeah, you could just treat it. And then, so basically, you were mentioning before we hopped on too, that it really changed your career as well, right? Like, that was,
Yes.
I'd love to hear a
Yes.
little about that.
Yeah. So, I've had many occupations. I started with my brother. I was a licensed pesticide applicator. We had a landscape business. We had 70, uh, customers basically that we took care of weekly, and we
Hmm.
did um, we did their plantings and sprayed their trees and sprayed for insects and stuff like that. And, I don't know if that really started my psoriasis because of the chemicals I was using. So one doctor said that it might have been from that. I don't know.
Wow.
So that's always still the question. I know it's genetic. I know, but
Hmm.
in my family, there's really not a lot of people that have psoriasis. I could see some
Interesting.
spots on my
Yeah.
blotches on my brother, but
Yep.
genetically, I don't see it unless my grandparents had it because the way people dressed years ago, they always were,
Yeah, you
in
might not
suits and
know.
stuff like
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Especially if they had a little
So
bit of it, like on their elbow or knees, you might not even know necessarily.
right. So I don't know if that was the cause or if it was genetic. I'm sure it was genetic. Um, so, so that was one occupation that I had to leave. And then, I started a pool business. I had a small appliance repair store it ran for 30 years. I actually ended up selling that because I thought it was contributing to my worsening of my
Wow.
psoriasis.
Yeah.
So, I was doing repairs on vacuums and stuff and dust was getting all over me. So I was
Yeah.
just, I just wanted to, eliminate all the possibilities, all the variables. I even took all the carpets out of my house, just
Yeah.
to make sure that I'm not, yeah, there's a lot I've done to deal with
Right.
my
Right.
disease. So, yeah, I worked as a supervisor in the post office. I worked up to that point, and I had to leave that career. I was a lieutenant and EMT in the Stony Brook Fire Department. I loved doing that because I was helping people. I was going out and then I started needing help myself. So, and that, today what I do is, to maintain is basically I'm in the stock market. I trade stocks. So even
Yeah.
today I was trading, and so I'm trying to be a better trader, but that's how I'm keeping
Yeah.
afloat.
No, that's incredible. And it's just
Yeah,
it's amazing to hear that like it really
yeah,
the diagnosis affected every angle of your life. It wasn't just, just oh, put this cream on and it'll be fine. I mean, that's a lot of changes that you have to think about and go through.
yeah,
And the environmental trigger is such an interesting one because we still don't know all the environmental triggers. Like we recently had an episode with Dr. Wilson Liao from UCSF, and he
right,
is like so smart. He studies all the genetics and these things, trying to figure out these environmental triggers because there's so much
right,
of you just hit and miss trying to see, was it this the workplace, is it this, is it home, that what
right.
actually triggered it. So he's doing a lot of amazing research. So hopefully we'll have some of these answers. Like what are, based on your genetic profile, what are the possible things that could trigger it? And you could see a world in the future where maybe your kids could also get genetic testing and they know, well, I have this genes, set of genes, so maybe I should avoid this and this trigger. So we're definitely not there yet, but like you could see a world where we could get
And,
that
and,
level of smart about it. So you just have more
and
education. Yeah.
that's what I wrote in my notes, doctor. I mean, I
Yeah.
think the future of psoriasis is going to be much better. I mean, it's great today. It's going to be even better because of all this research that's going into it. And then we have the help of AI now. So these
Yeah.
computer models are going to be able to speed right through, the genetics of yeah. So I'm really excited for the future of psoriasis patients,
Yeah.
and
That's
I
incredible.
mentioned this to you. I mentioned this to you before. Going to a doctor or a dermatologist, you expect to have all the answers. As a patient, you're sitting there. Okay, I'm going to the doctor. It's going to get resolved, right? But one of my doctors said, "That's all I can do for you. I
Yeah.
can't do any more for you." And that hit me heavy. I mean, driving home on the expressway, I was just thinking to myself, "Wow, this is real. This
Yeah.
is,
And
it's
I
going to
think
be
as a physician too, you kind of like you don't want to say that. You don't want to have disorders where you can't do anything about. That's like the worst feeling. So I think that's why
right,
psoriasis docs are so happy now too, because they can actually do more. Like, well, we could do this, and if that biologic doesn't work, we could do this other one. And
right,
it's sort of a better situation for both sides, I think, because the worst thing is
yeah,
like, well, you're the physician, you're here to help, and you have no tools to help with. I mean, I think a little bit of that, part of that, knowing the triggers and things like that, we still feel a little bit that way because our patients ask, "What is it? Diet? Is it this? What should I be changing?" And we hate that we don't have those answers. So I think in a world where we can have this like specialized testing and be able to kind of figure out all these things, that would be like the ultimate goal.
yeah. So
I
let's
think just to
talk
get all
about some
those
of those
answers.
tools. Yeah, let's talk about some of those
Yeah.
tools. Like, I mean, um, per se, like before, actually, the Biologics that I was on, that I mentioned earlier, I'm trying to find it. I was on Raptiva. I signed up for a clinical trial with
Oh yeah.
Raptiva,
Yeah.
and I totally cleared. I thought it was
Wow.
I thought it was a cure at that point because I was
Yeah.
working at that time and
Raptiva
I was
actually
applying.
worked well. I remember that that worked
Yeah.
really well. I remember those trials. Yeah.
Yeah, so I was stoked. I was so excited. Like, this is it. I called up the National Psoriasis Foundation. I told them I'm not going to be needing your services anymore
Yep.
because I'm
Done.
clear. And little did I know, it wasn't the answer. It was just basically a treatment that, and that's what these biologics are. They're great. They work for a period of time, like every 5 years, and then I would have to switch to another biologic. So do
Do
you
you find
experience that a lot
that
with your, yeah,
some patients do? Some patients do get this biologic fatigue where you start building antibodies to the biologic that you're on. So then the efficacy just kind of drops. It's at a higher rate when patients aren't super diligent with the schedule, which happens normally. I feel like I would do it too. I'd be like, I'm clear now. I could probably skip this dose. That's just human
right,
nature. So
right,
that happens more when there's any sort of like lengthening of the time between, like if you're supposed to get injections every 3 months, but it becomes every 6 months or so, that can increase the risk. But then there are patients where they're doing everything right on time and it still happens too. They get that biologic fatigue. And then, but luckily now we have so many agents that we can just kind of change things around. But it is really disheartening too, because I think sometimes it feels like they're reliving it all over again, right? Like you kind of feel like you
yeah,
found the solution,
yep.
things are good. And then I don't, does it bring everything all back again when it stops working and you can have to start that whole process again?
Yeah. but you have so many tools in your
Yeah.
chest now, you can basically just assign another prescription to another
Yeah, and the
biologic.
biologics are so good. Like they're all pretty effective. The safety profiles are all pretty similar. So
Yeah. Do
luckily
you
we
find,
kind of can find
yeah, do you find that patients are a little weary about going on biologics? Because I find that in the group, a lot of them,
for
they're
sure. Yep.
resistant. They're afraid of the side effects.
Exactly. Yeah, that's still a little bit present. It's I think it's gotten a little bit better over time. I think years
Mm.
ago it was like, oh my gosh, what are these medicines and what do they
Yeah,
do? But there's still a little bit of that, little bit of hesitancy, especially I
yeah,
find the hardest population. I think if you have arthritis, psoriatic arthritis, we're almost going to be like, you have to do this. Your joints are being damaged. Then there are patients
right,
who are covered as well. They have a lot of skin involvement, and then it's a little bit more of like a just, I think you really need to be on this. You have a lot of inflammation going on. Then there's patients who actually have more than mild disease to the point where they're being affected, but they're like, is it bad enough to warrant going on a biologic? And I always think,
right,
if you're thinking about it every day, it's bad enough, right? Like it's something that's on your mind, because what we want is for
right,
you to do everything else in life, not not have to think about your psoriasis every day. So I
right.
find
And it's the
that's a
location.
population.
Isn't it the location too that you would consider as far as putting them on? I mean, if you have
Totally.
on your face or your genitals, I would think
Exactly.
that's a you might
Totally,
want
because
to
that
consider.
would technically be mild, like less than 3% of your
Right,
body surface area. But that's those areas are such high important specialized sites that initially back
right,
in the day when the biologics were first coming out, we had a lot of trouble for those patients getting things covered through
right,
insurance, because they were like, well, that's not enough. But I think over time that problem has actually eased up a bit too. I think we can get medicines a little more easily for special sites. So which is
right.
great. That's been a great advent. Yeah, I'd love to hear kind of what you're seeing, the trends you're seeing in the group. Are there specific things that people talk about most? I'm guessing it's a little bit more around
I
diagnosis,
would
is it
think like,
psoriasis or not, or treatments.
yeah, a lot of people when they're initially being diagnosed with psoriasis, they don't even know, like they'll post a picture of their irritation on their skin and they'll say, "Is this psoriasis?" I know, obviously, I always say, go see a dermatologist. We can't really,
Yeah,
you know, this group isn't responsible for your diagnosis of psoriasis. We're just basically here as a peer support group.
yeah,
So, um, uh, financial issues, insurance issues, which is so great because, like we were talking about earlier on Facebook, we said about getting coverage for these
yeah,
expensive medications, and that could be your insurance company doesn't want to cover those. So we talked about step therapy, a lot of step therapy issues. This it's just so much to cover.
yeah,
When you first, it's like thrown in your face. It's overwhelming at first when you're a new psoriasis patient. But now it seems like things are going so smoothly now. I know I had a dermatologist in Florida, which amazing. She was a PA actually, and she sent me. I was telling her something that was going wrong, and she with my body, and she said, "Well, you really need to go see a proctologist," And she
yeah,
wasn't going to prescribe my medication until I saw that doctor,
yeah,
which I found was unusual because I really need, when you're a psoriasis patient, if you don't have your medications, you kind of feel this anxiety. There's an anxiety level.
yeah.
So,
Right. And
and,
if it's something you've been on, you want to not have that
yeah,
biologic fatigue too. Like it's important to keep up the
yeah.
schedule.
Yeah, the schedule is very important. So, like, I know today, and also refrigeration when it comes to your house. So these things have all been improved, and I'm
Mhm.
very grateful that we are where we are today. So, a matter of fact, I just received my injection the other day, and I'm due on the first to inject, and it, every time it gets to that point, I do have some anxiety of injection day. So,
Really?
it's like, I
Yeah.
think there's a statistic out there that 50% of the people are afraid of needles, and I was
Yeah.
definitely one of them. So,
Yeah.
but even those medical devices have become so easily,
Yep,
uh,
kind of easier to use
of-
the auto injector pens. Although
yes,
there are
thank you.
oral biologics coming out too. So
Yeah, that's even easier,
we'll
right?
see if they work as well as because it's true. Some people just still really just don't like the injection part
Yeah,
of things. So we'll see how the
right,
oral
right.
biologics go.
So with the oral medication, You have to take that daily, like Otezla, which
You know,
isn't a
I, I,
doctor.
I think so, but I'm actually not even quite sure of. They're so early. I don't know what schedules they're going to
Okay.
come out with for taking it. But in theory,
Okay.
they're going to be monoclonal antibodies. So I think they probably will have longer durations in between. The small molecules like the Otezla and other medicines, your body gets rid of them. That's why you have to kind of take it again. Whereas the
Yeah.
antibodies go in and block receptors or different things that then have a longer time before kind of recycling through. So I would guess that they'll be less often dosing than daily. But I actually, it's probably so early, I'm not even quite sure exactly kind of what they'll, and
So
this is the
even
first oral I've heard of, so I'm sure then after that more oral biologics will come
yeah,
out, and then they'll be better each time. So
would it be like a JAK inhibitor,
no,
or
so
is it going to
complete.
be
It'll be like a biologic, which are like monoclonal antibodies, basically. But in the
okay?
past, those had to be injected because when you digest it orally, your stomach would just get rid of it because it's basically like a protein. But now, whatever way technology-wise they're able to do it, they're able to deliver the antibody through the oral route rather than
So
having to
it's
inject
gonna
it.
block those pathways similar to what an
Similar to
injectable biologic.
exactly. So
Wow,
lots
that's
of cool,
incredible.
lots of cool science coming out. So we'll see how all of
Yeah,
that ends up looking like. And I'm curious about one trend. In the past, we used to find that it was, we all sort of did like psoriasis fellowships, and we did lots of these biologics and easy to
yeah.
prescribe. But we did find a trend throughout the U.S. where some dermatologists weren't prescribing and this was a while back, but some dermatologists maybe weren't prescribing biologics, or it was hard for someone to find a board certified derm who then can prescribe them biologics. Did you see that throughout your journey, or do you hear that through the network now? I mean, hopefully it's not a problem anymore, but like, are people able to
Uh,
find board certified dermatologists
if it
pretty
is, if it
easily? And
is, sometimes people in the group are having a hard time with their dermatologist, and what I would suggest is a Google search, basically for board certified dermatologist. But it hasn't come up that much
okay, good.
now. So, like
Okay,
you say,
perfect.
it is improving. But
Yeah,
and some of the clinical trials that I was in that I didn't mention before was
yeah,
engineered tuberculosis. I don't know if you
yep,
ever heard of it, but these are the things
yep.
that, as a psoriasis patient, I was just exhausting everything, trying to, find ways to control my psoriasis because there was nothing I did at that point. I really wasn't successful. And then I also went to the Dead Sea in Israel, and
Oh yeah,
that was very time consuming, and it took a lot of time
right.
away from my family. I had to take time away from work, so it was getting to be a big problem,
Did it
And
work?
then I
How
went,
did you find that?
yeah,
Because a lot of
oh,
people
I
say it
loved it.
works.
It does work. It does work, but it's a lot of work. It's not when you go there. It's climate therapy, right? And you go.
Yeah.
There's a doctor from San Francisco who I met there, and he was running the show basically, and he would tell me, spend 2 hours, work up to 2 hours sea, 6 hours sun, and so basically I was periodically moving into that, final treatment, but it took 30 days. So,
Yeah.
and it was so hot. It was so hot when I went there in April, and it was like, they had
That's
fans and stuff. You
incredible.
could lay down.
Yeah.
Yeah. But we would basically, it was nude sun tanning, right?
Hmm.
And, but it was, there was a female section and a male section.
Yeah.
We would play soccer. We were so bored,
Yeah. Six
doing
hours.
it. And yeah, so we would be rubbing olive oil and
Yeah.
coal tars and salicylic acid, which we did. I did, and it's so amazing. Like back in the day, NACIDs and DMARDs. I was
Yep.
doing all of that,
All of it. Yeah.
with the psoriatic arthritis. So like even sulfasalazine, which
Hmm.
and they prescribed me methotrexate, and they wanted to do cyclosporine, but I read so much about it. I'm pretty knowledgeable, so
Yep.
I wasn't really excited about the side effects
Yep.
about that. But it's just a choice that I made. Some people are doing really are having great results with those medications. They're old
Yes.
medications,
Yep.
and they've been around forever. So
Exactly. Yeah.
safety profile, safety. I'm big into the safety profile of everything. So the
Exactly.
medications that are recommended to me by my dermatologist and Dr. Lebwall, and if I have a question, I'll ask Dr. Lebwall. Um, but I always look at the safety profile, and then if it's got no black box warnings, it's a big thing for me. I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, this is. no cancer indications and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
I'm
Yep.
happy to take that medication,
Because
and
those are
it.
such hard
I've been
choices for patients to make, right? You have, you're like, well, this can clear
yeah
this, but then there's this potential,
yeah.
and it's like, what do the percentages mean?
And
Yeah.
what's your insurance going to pay?
What's your insurance going to
Which
pay? There's a
yeah,
lot of
yes, yes.
different
So a lot of
aspects of it.
variables, right?
But that's
Yeah. So
fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing the story. And any last minute things to share, any trends or anything that
absolutely. I'm glad you asked because I was just going to bring it up, and I just found this morning. I think you probably know about this, but on March 25th of this year, the Science Daily, they just came out with some Australian National University said they discovered gene mutations. I don't know if have you heard of the IKBKB? So there's
this
two
sounds
genes that they
vaguely familiar. Yeah, but
so this is the article that came
oh,
out, and
fantastic. Let's put that, post that on the bottom too.
yeah, it's just so amazing. I was just reading,
So
and it also
new
shares a
genes that they
story.
found. Yep.
Yeah, new genes. So, this is like, I remember when they found, the genes that are responsible, like IL-17
Hmm.
and IL-23 and IL-12. I remember all that and
Yeah,
how exciting that was. This is even more exciting because they used mouse models for this as well. And, and,
that's incredible.
so I don't know what's going to develop from this, but with
Yeah.
AI, I'm sure there might be a cure in the future, right? We'll
There's
talk
so
about
much
it more.
coming out. And then actually I should post Dr. Liao's link for their study too. I think what they're doing is, sounds like you basically, and you, anybody can go into the link and maybe read the full description, but I think what they're doing is they're sending a system to the house where it's maybe just even a poke with like a little bit of blood, and they're taking it and doing like genes, RNA, and like all this, the genomics, the transcriptome, and just checking all these things, and kind of putting
Yeah.
it all together in an effort to, I think, discover more things like this. So
Are they still doing the biopsies like when I went to not only Icon, I went to Rockefeller University and they did a punch biopsy. Are they still doing that
I
for
think
psoriasis
there's
patients?
still probably things like that being done too, to take a look at, what is in the plaque, and maybe try to figure out what exact cytokine profile might be affecting one patient versus another, to try to maybe guide some therapy towards like TNF or IL-17, different things. But I think now it's even to the point where, even sounds like it was just maybe like a drop of blood or something very small, even less invasive than a biopsy, that Dr. Liao's team is, and I'm sure probably other centers too are working with. But it's really, really,
Amazing.
I think the genetics of these things, and I know there's a little bit of, in some circles people are against genetics and all of that, but I think, we have to kind of figure out these mechanisms to be able to
Absolutely.
know more and do more, and just even prediction, like you mentioned, just knowing what genes go with what environmental factors. And so it's
And then they can,
so important to know.
and you mentioned also on Facebook Live that aren't they using that information to prescribe medication that would work better? I
Exactly.
mean,
Yep.
like, yeah,
Yeah. So one of the things we talked about with him too is, can we use these genetics and your basically your transcriptome and all of that to figure out what medicine would do better for your skin, rather than just starting different biologics and just seeing which
so
works
amazing.
better. And then more importantly, probably for the psoriatic arthritis, because we want to do less guessing there and just get to the right therapy earlier to
Yeah.
prevent, joint damage, basically. So yeah, I think this genetic information is going to be so helpful. I look forward to reading that article as well. If you're able to send us the link, we'll put it
Oh yeah,
below. I'll try to
absolutely.
find Dr. Liao's link as well for his study, if anybody wants to. I think there was a couple of studies. That was one for, it's like everyone, and then there was another one, they were doing a survey, I think, for perimenopausal women. So I'm sure their site will have all the different, because I think it's so important to kind of take part in these research studies too. That's
Yeah.
how they're able to kind of study and figure out new
Yeah,
therapeutics.
I would
So
love to participate. I mean, if I can get that, I'll definitely,
yeah,
send
actually
some
I'll try to
blood.
find that.
And
Exactly. I think it sounds like they're making it easier and easier. Trials, I think, initially were harder and harder, and now they're becoming even easier. So, which is also great.
absolutely.
Well,
Thanks for
thank you
having me.
so much. Thank you so much for taking the time, and just everything that
You're
you're
amazing.
doing. The Overcoming Psoriasis group is fantastic. It's so
Thank you.
amazing, the community you've built and all the support that everybody has. And it does seem to be really internationally, which is amazing, because I'm sure there's probably some parts of the world that might not even have as easy as access to dermatologists or some of
Yes.
these biologics. So it's really incredible, the advice and information and correct information that you're providing. It's like really
Good.
high level,
We try
correct
our best,
information.
right?
So which is
With
really
the help
amazing.
of people like yourself,
Yeah.
we try our best to get the right information out there. It's really
Yeah.
important, you know, and
Yeah. So
not to have misinformation on the site. And that's
exactly.
what I strive for. So
Sounds good.
thank you so
Perfect. Well,
much.
thank you so much, Todd.
All right. You're welcome.
Thank you for listening to the Future of Dermatology podcast. Remember to hit that subscribe button and share the podcast with your friends. The more you share and subscribe, the more we'll be able to grow and share our dermatology knowledge. If you have burning dermatology questions, feel free to leave them in the comment below, and we would love to address them in a future episode. And please note that this podcast is not intended to substitute for medical advice from your doctor.